So I think we're in treat in addition to our speakers that you'll introduce. Please join me in welcoming Mike Keven.
Thank you, Shahab, and welcome, Rotarians. I'm honored to be here and introduce to you our honored guests today, Representative Joel Briscoe and Representative Keven Stratton from the Utah House of Representatives. Now, I know I've had quite a few requests to tell some of my hilarious jokes. We're going to forego that, so you're welcome. We mentioned, President Shahab mentioned the cards. We want you to write your questions about the Public Lands Initiative various subject on the cards. We'll do our best to do short intros and short presentation by each of the representatives, and then we'll have a chance for question and answer discussion that fits what you're interested in hearing about. Here we go. Representative Joel Briscoe, immediately to my left, lives in Salt Lake City. He represents District 25 in the Utah House of Representatives. He also serves as the Democratic Assistant Whip school teacher. He serves on the House Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environment Committee, on the Revenue and Taxation Standing Committee. He's also a member of the Public Education Appropriations Committee and the Executive Appropriations Committee. He's a member of the Commission for the Stewardship of Public Lands, a great public servant. I'm going to also introduce Representative Stratton. Representative Keven Stratton currently serves as the chair of the Commission on the Stewardship of Public Lands. He believes that citizens and businesses and government must work effectively together. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee, the House Public Utilities, Energy and Technology Committee, the House Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Committees. He's been named Outstanding Businessman and Outstanding Citizen and lives in Orem, Utah. These are both wonderful public servants, and let's give them a Rotary welcome, please. So we'll begin. I'll turn the time to Representative Stratton to begin, and after his remarks, Representative Briscoe will speak, and then we'll have a chance to do some questions.
It's a great honor to be here with you. I was pleased to see some familiar faces as I came in, greeted by one of my well-respected colleagues in the House, Representative Arendt, a member, a fellow Rotarian. I'm so grateful for the work and service that you do. I commend you. I've learned that you're one of the biggest Rotary clubs in the world, one of the first established in the world, one of the first 20. I congratulate you. Truly, this is sews and hems together the fabric of our communities and our society. Around these tables, what takes place around these tables, I would say, is much more important than what takes place around the tables in our legislative bodies. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. Grateful to be joined by my good colleague, Representative Briscoe. I respect him. And he was, I remind you from time to time that he did a great job teaching my nieces and nephews when he was a teacher. They have great respect for him, and some of those times when he's a little bit irritated at me, I try and with the good. I so love her, so grateful for her blessing and standing by my side through these many years. She made a comment, and I've learned that when she makes a comment, I should listen. She said, you ought to maybe consider showing that short clip of Ronald Rotunda. Ronald Rotunda is considered by many as the leading constitutional expert in our country. And it might help us get a better perspective when we talk about public land. We talked about the Bears Ears concept of a national monument being placed there, 1.9 million acres. I heard reference to the Public Lands Initiative. Public land in the state of Utah is a big deal. Over 67% of our state are public lands. What we do with those public lands that we so cherish. and need to protect is very, very important, not only for us today, but in the future, as we go from 3 million to 6 million in the state of Utah and deal with all the challenges and opportunities, I would say, that come. So I'd just like to show this video, and then I'll turn the time to Representative Briscoe. I know that it's an odd thing for someone, a politician, to maybe not take all the time they can at the podium, but I like to consider myself perhaps a public servant rather than a politician. So if we can get this going, we'll see. Looks like we have some sound, action. Very good.
I've been involved in constitutional law since I graduated from law school in 1970, in the prior century. And this is one of the most exciting cases I've worked on, because it relates to a basic principle of states' rights. In a way, it's not to give rights to states, it's to give rights to us, the people. When the 13 states got together, they understood that some states had a lot of land, Virginia. Some states had very little land, Rhode Island. Virginia claimed land from the eastern shore all the way to the west coast. In fact, it was originally part of Virginia, according to the title it got from the king. Well, people didn't want that to happen, and they didn't want some states to be unequal to others. They should be equal in what we call sovereign powers. They should have the same powers over their land that the other states had. And so they had this principle, which the Supreme Court has called the equal footing doctrine. All states come in on equal footing. We knew how to acquire land, but the Friends wanted to make sure that power and legal obligation to dispose of the land as a way of developing the nation. The idea was that they would turn over the land to the federal government, the unappropriated land, the so-called public lands, to the federal government was so that it could give clear titles. There wouldn't be dispute on who owns land, the federal government, the state government. No, that the federal government would engage in the regular disposition of the land at first. They did this for 38 states: Maine, Texas, Tennessee, Vermont, Kentucky, Hawaii. In all of those, the federal government turned over to the states the public lands when they became states. Not so for Utah, Oregon, and other states. 12 are in a distinctly orphan-like position. They're less equal than others. If you drew a longitudinal line roughly through Denver, you'd find to the right of that line, facing the map, the federal government owns hardly anything. The federal government owns at least half or substantially more than that in many of the states. And if you subtract from all that land the federal parks, the Grand Canyon and so on, that's minuscule compared to all the rest that the federal government owns, and it lies fallow. For example, in Utah, the federal government owns more land than the entire state of New York. It is one of the counties that owns an amount of land greater than the entire state of Connecticut. Over 2/3 of the state is owned by the federal government. The legislature and people of Utah and the governor, they all agree, could not string a fiber optic cable across the state without getting permission from a bunch of faceless federal bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. That's not what the framers intended. It's not the way it was. It was in this country until about 1976. Seem to understand it. Now, what the Federal Land Policy Amendment Act tells us in 1976 is that 12 of the 50 states are going to be treated second rate, not on an equal footing. We didn't know that at first, and the way it was phrased, it still allowed some sales, but the way it's been interpreted, we have figured out that the federal government is not about to allow these 12 states to be like all of the others. If we have this problem, what has been done? The Constitution has given us a remedy, provided the states have the power to sue the federal government for violation of their rights. Well, I'm really pleased to be working with a great team of lawyers. There's John Howard, who's up.
Maybe in the interest of time, I'll pause there and just share in context. The Commission for the Stewardship of Public Land retained outside legal counsel and studied the perpetual holding of the public lands within our state by the federal government. And he's identified, came back and identified 2 causes of action dealing with equal state sovereignty and equal footing. That was reaffirmed in 2013 by the Supreme Court. That those notions and ideals, when we talk about our public lands, they hone in on that. The issue, as we talk about public lands initiative, bears here, is really how should our public lands be cared for? It's a policy decision. We're all wanting to protect the Bears Ear area. We're all wanting to protect the wonderful, pristine public lands that we have in the state of Utah. But as we look at the political horizon, the spectrum, if we step back 30,000 feet, the challenge is we have a broken system to do that. We have what I would say is a broken system reflected in the structure that's in place. It was not constitutionally meant to be in that place. And I'd simply say that we, as Utahns, are better controlling and governing our public lands than those who are far removed. I'm a farmer. I can walk out of my peach orchard in the morning and make a decision on what that orchard needs to maintain health and vitality better than I can taking pictures and sending a report to Washington, D.C. and waiting several months for a report back. The harvest will be over by then. So I'll turn the time to Representative Briscoe.
This is a rare day. I got called honorable and distinguished. My wife said I had to get elected to be called honorable. So while we're waiting for the technology people, when I started teaching school 34 years ago, they said, be kind to the secretary. You know, it's nice to be nice to the principal, it matters, be kind to the secretary. Now it's be kind to the principal, the secretary, the person who can fix the printer. The IT guys, the network people are essential. I really got Mr. Deputy, I thought that was his title. I said, here's Mr. Deputy. I thought, wow, you guys are really formal. I asked him, we had a little bit of time, I said, tell me what Rotary has done. And he got very excited talking to me about Rotary. I understand now that you have an international focus, that you're doing great work in Morocco. I was excited to hear about the work you do in Franklin Elementary School. And I commend other-minded citizens like yourself who are devoting your time and resources. I know that many hearts have been lifted in this community and elsewhere because you volunteer and care so much for other people. Thank you so much. I'd also like to give a shout out to my compatriot on the Commission for the Stewardship of Public Lands, Mr. Stratton, Representative Stratton. He's always been willing to listen to me, hear my complaints, hear my suggestions. The Commission for Stewardship of Public Lands, he put a couple of people on there. I asked and he was willing to listen, and I want him to know how much I appreciate that. I have 3 distinguished guests here that I'd like to point out to you. Mary Benali. Mary drove up from Mexican water south of Bluff. I'm told that she is celebrating because last year she got electricity and water. Mary has had a career in public education, and I'm told does a lot of volunteer work on domestic violence issues. And she is a board member of Utah Dabakis.
Would you please stand so we can recognize
This is Mary Benali. We also have with us Jean Meza, who is an attorney who is doing a legal fellow with UDP, with Utah Dabakis. There's also and Gavin Noyes, who is the director of UDP. Depending on the questions you ask, I might lean on them for some answers. Because Mary goes on the mountain. Mary collects the herbs and the wood, and knows the names of the animals, and knows the stories and what they mean. The rest of us just like to go there and read about it. I have 2 slides I want to show you. Is this showing out?
Here you go. Yeah.
I don't want that blue thing. I don't know why that blue thing is there. Maybe I'll click up there. It's not a map, so I'm useless. Okay. The orange outline is the outline of the proposed Bears Ears National Monument, that were proposed by the leadership of the Navajo, Ute, Zuni, and Hopi nations. The shaded area is the area that would be protected under the PLI, under the Public Land Initiative. Does that give you a rough idea? And I think this is the one I want. Let's see if I'm that good. Okay. The crosshatch area shows land that would be protected both by PLI and by the Bears Ears proposal. The darker areas and the kind of ochre shaded areas are areas that would be protected by Bears Ears but not be protected by the Public Lands Initiative. I was talking to Mary about it before now, and it was a little bit too fuzzy. The image didn't stay up long enough. There's some area over on the east, over just west of Monticello. I camped in the Forest Service campgrounds west of there. I don't understand why that's particularly revered by Native American nations, but over to the west, kind of in the very center, there's two canyons, the Red Canyon and the White Canyon. And I drove down to Bluff to listen to the testimony that was given to Secretary of Interior Jewell. And after that, Representative King and I drove up on the mountain and ate behind Bears Ears on a beautiful alpine meadow plateau with the Intertribal Coalition. And on our way up, we stopped at a pullout, and our guide said, he pointed out the mesas, he pointed out the valleys and the canyons. Those two canyons, the Red Canyon and the White Canyon, they're not in the PLI, but are in the Bears Ears Mesa proposal, are two of the richest archaeological sites in the world for Native Americans. And they are not in the PLI, and they are not protected. One of the persons we talked to, we hear there's 100,000 archaeological sites. He said 100,000, there might be a million. The richest are probably in those two canyons. So that's one of the reasons why I support the Bears Ears National Monument. The White House has a place on the White House website where you can write you can petition the White House. If you get 10,000 signatures, you get a response from the White House. I read this a month or so ago, and it says that someone, I'm sure in Utah, wrote it, asking the White House to take a position in opposition to Bears Ears National Monument. It said that virtually no Utah elected officials were in favor. Representative. I'm a real one. I'm up here. I am elected. I don't know if it makes you honorable knowing I get elected, but I figured out how to do that a couple of times. And I support the Bears Ears National Monument. One thing I learned by my trip, I camped out down there multiple times, but what I learned by talking to the people who helped put this together was that a year ago, this past summer, leaders of the Zuni, the Hopi, the Ute, and the Navajo got together and identified four things that were essential and critical to them. One, sacred sites. Two, everything that's on those sites, the mountains, the minerals, the animals, the plants. Three, the language. And four, making sure this is passed on to their youth. And they got together and they drew the map. It wasn't environmentalists who drew the map. It was Native Americans who drew the map. And when you hear people in Utah say, well, you don't live in Utah, so you shouldn't have a right to comment on this issue. I'm a Christian, so let me draw you an analogy. Here's my analogy. Let's say the city of Jerusalem wants to allow some building on the East Mount, on the Temple Mount in East Jerusalem. And Christians and Muslims and Jews around the world are outraged that they would possibly dream of doing that on the Temple Mount. And the city of Jerusalem says, well, you can't comment because you don't live in Jerusalem. We would find that outrageous. We would say, I might live in Utah, I might live in South America or Russia or Japan, I might live in India, I might live in South Africa, but I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Jew. That is my spiritual homeland. Bears Ears National Monument is their spiritual homeland.
think you get a sense of just a very overview of what we're talking about here. We're very interested in your questions. I have a couple of questions I'll ask to get us started. And then if you'll hold up the cards as you have a question, John, Sergeant at Arms will, isn't that great having a Sergeant of Arms named Sergeant? That's like a past president named Deputy. We are fortunate. Okay, here would be question number one. I'll let either one of you begin with this. What would be the long-term plan of the federal government if there were a monument designated here? Do we know that? And how does that get communicated to the people?
I have no end to the White House. I have no idea. But my understanding, Gavin, you want to come grab this? My understanding is that this would be the first national monument co-managed by a federal agency and by the tribes. So maybe Mary or Joni would like to comment.
Do you have any comment in the meantime, Representative Stratton?
Thank you. One of the challenges we face in having as a national monument is the looking to the future. We can look to the past on what has been done. We have, for example, the Grand Staircase National Monument that was designated by President Clinton in the sunset of his administration. The experiences that have been there have been very, very challenging. One of the things we have to recognize is while there can be intent, good intent, as it plays out with a broken structure, it's very, very difficult to allow those written words to come to the intended use. There's many examples for example, in the Grand Staircase, where in the writing of the document, writing of the intent, has not been followed and lived up to it. And I may ask, I do have Matt Anderson from the Southern Institute that kind of represents another perspective as well, just so we can see both perspectives. He wrote a nice op-ed on this issue, and he may want to comment as well after we hear.
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, it's what's the federal government's role in managing the monument?
Yeah, what would be the go forward?
Okay, so the go forward, according to the proposal, which is the ideal of what we're looking for, is that there'd be a commission of tribes that would be collaboratively at the table, so to speak, in the management, so that they would be there throughout, not just the formation of the management plan, but continuing monitoring and continuing to make sure that the management plan was implemented the way that the tribes wanted, along with the federal government.
Thank you.
So I was just going to speak to that as well. I think Representative Stratton hit it on the head. The point is, things can be in documents, there can be laws made and policies made, but they're not always adhered to. I want to focus on the Grand Staircase Escalante and one other example. In the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, when it was decreed by President Clinton, there was a promise in his presidential proclamation that said grazing would remain at historical levels. That's taken directly from what he promised. Today, grazing is about a third of what it was 20 years ago when it was designated. Now, that doesn't seem like a big deal to many of us who live here in Salt Lake City because we don't have cattle. But for the people of the people of the area around the Bears Ears, for the people of Garfield County, it's a really big deal. Another example was the National Monument was created years ago, Effigy Mounds National Monument. The point of the monument was to protect the sacred burial sites and mounds of the Native Americans there. Come to find out, this came out recently, $3.3 million of taxpayer money was used to pave over those mounds for biking trails, hiking trails, and roads. So even if the intent might be pure, it doesn't always come to pass. And even if it's in law, it doesn't always come to fruition. So thank you.
Here's an interesting question. How has the Antiquities Act been used in the past in Utah. It's been mentioned, Grand Staircase Escalante. And what has been the impact as far as we're attracting tourism, or that's a very general question.
There's two questions. The question that came from the audience was, how has the Antiquities Act been used in the past? The 5 national monuments in Utah, 4 of them were started as 5 national parks in Utah. 4 of them were created first as national monuments, 3 of them by Republican presidents. So it's been used widely in Utah over the decades. The trust hired a Republican law firm to go out and survey hundreds of Utahns. They released the results in August last month. 55% of Utahns, and they oversampled San Juan County. 55% of Utahns in favor of Bears Ears National Monument, 41 opposed. They asked them how they felt about your Utah. What do you think about the Grand Staircase National Monument? 70% said they thought it was a great idea. A third party outside of Utah economic consulting group did a study of the area and the towns surrounding the Grand Staircase National Monument. Jobs plus 38% in 10 years. Per capita income plus 30%.
I heard the word, the year 1912, from the audience. The Antiquities Act was established turn of the century, 19th century, to create protection for very important artifacts and those things that we value. We all value the things that Representative Briscoe has talked about that we value in the Bears Ears area. However, the initial intent is, if you look back at legislative language, it was, well, what size would this be? How would this be used? It was very de minimis, very small areas, very small. There was one comment, less than 10 acres. Well, this is 1.9 million. A president using Antiquities pen without the consent of Congress, and without the consent of the people within the state. And I do recognize and respect that there's two sides to every issue, and there are those that do support the creation of the national monument. But we need to remember that our total federal delegation, as opposed to, they've got on record, the state legislature passed in June in a special session, passed a resolution in opposition to it. In opposition to the unilateral use of the Antiquities Act, meaning the president uses that power, executive branch power at the federal level, to create this monument. County commissioners that are elected in this, of course, it's going to be the major impact in that county, are in unison, in opposition to this. It is not that we don't want protection. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the methodology used to do that. And what is going to be the best method to use. We all want to get to where we're going to get there. It's how we get there. And sometimes in doing that, we destroy where we're trying to get. So Grand Staircase, it's been used by both Republican and Democratic administrations. Again, 1.9 million, just to put that in perspective, that's almost 3 times the size of the state of Rhode Island. We have a president that's establishing a state, 3 states in our country. That is not constitutionally aligned. I'm not taking issue on that needs to be protected, but it's the methodology.
If this monument is established, is there a way that all sides can come to agreement or to an agreement or a solution that promotes goodwill and better friendships and benefits all? That's the Rotary 4-way test that we try to ask ourselves. Is there a way that this happens?
I think we all need to go to that wonderful conference on peace and love and goodwill that we talked about earlier. You know, I guess you look again, what is done. has said there are still open and raw wounds in our state stemming from the Grand Staircase National Monument. That whatever comes down or whatever comes to us, we will join together and make the best of. But there are better ways to do that. I am certain, as I've sat and talked to our Attorney General and our Governor, that a designation will bring about a lot of litigation, and there will be a long period of time working through the process. That's what I would foresee. I would hope that we could get there, but it's going to take a lot of water to get there under the bridge.
I have heard on more than one occasion the Native Americans speaking about this proposal talk about healing, talking about their hope and their goal would be to preserve the land that it may heal. So I love going to natural bridges because I think it's stunning. And I like being in a place where there's this gorgeous night sky and there's no light bleed from a metropolis next door. And if it's not cloudy, the stars are incredible. But what would it do for us to be able to have people drive to this place and say, boy, those are beautiful mountains, and here's the geology. But you know what those mountains mean to the Zuni? Let me tell you what they mean to the Ute. Let me tell you what they do when they go up on that mountain at this particular time of year, who they pray to, and who they pray to when they light the fire, what they go hunting for, and the prayers they give when they say thanks to their animal catch. I mean, there's a place where the reef meets the San Juan River, and every one of these religions in Native American religion is kind of a place of a second coming. Couldn't we all learn something other than ourselves? When I was in Bluff, a well-intentioned man who was a county commissioner handed some letters to the Secretary of the Interior saying, I'm representing my constituents. This all started when my great-grandpa came here in 1857. Because before my great-grandpa came here, no one settled this place. The Indians behind us laughed. I was nervous laughing. And I realized it's really not that much different as a US history teacher than what's been going on for 500 years on how European nations justified what we did in India, China, South and Southeast Asia, and Africa, and Central America, and South America. You might be living here, but we know better. And we're going to impose our culture on you. Maybe it's time to allow them to have a little bit of their culture and then teach us.
Tonight at the Rotary meeting, we just scratched the surface, don't we? That was a very good statement, Representative Briscoe. Representative Stratton, do you have a final summary or statement you'd like to make?
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I can see clearly we all are very, very concerned about the stewardship that's come to all of us to care for and protect and preserve and use the resources that have been given to us going forward. There is, unfortunately, when you have two sides that have to see different roads, sometimes you can become very diverse in trying to put forward your notion of what you see ought to be there. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of misinformation, a lot of frustration around this issue. It is a huge, huge issue, and I recognize that. But I would say from this perspective that we begin by saying we want to respect your wishes like you would like us, like we would like you to respect our wishes. And it really is in the Rotarian way of honoring, respecting the diversity of thought and experience that is there. Personally, I have had a very sacred experience on the Bears Ear area as I was there with my son and my nephew. This is precious resource that we have. And I believe that we can, as we do on many issues. I remember two sessions ago when we led this country dealing with issues related to respect and honor of all people, no matter what religion or gender or whatever preference they show. We can do this on this issue as well. I believe that having the government closest to the people is going to be best for the people.
Thank you for your great questions. I wish we had more time.
You've got three experts here after.
Yeah, those of you who have the time, stick around and ask questions. First of all, thank you, representatives, for your service to our community and to our state. We thank you for taking the time. Mike referred to the Rotary four-way test, and all of us Rotarians try to live by those. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And that's why we want more people to become Rotarians. It sounded like you wanted to know a little bit more about Rotary. I guess the goal for this group is to improve 10,000 lives in our community every year. And we invite you to come on September 20th and hear the report out from two of our finest presidents, and maybe even consider joining us. This is a great group of people. Could I ask members of the program committee to stand up, please? They do a great job. Isn't this informative? Isn't this nice to know what the members of the program? We are going to contribute a book, and both representatives have written inspiring messages in here. You're welcome to come and read them. And Linda Cruz has done a great job of Native American mythology. So this will be contributed to Franklin Elementary. Next week, we are going to be at Joseph Smith Memorial Building in the Wasatch Room. And the topic will be quite different, Comic-Con. So, yes, and the Redwood Garden, please don't forget that, buy your tickets for that. And I think September 20th, at the risk of being really repetitive, would be a great time for all of our Rotarians to bring at least one friend so they hear the difference that we want to make in our community. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
It's good to see you.